Opposition MPs are not the only ones calling for that measure to be expanded. Liberal MP from Hamilton, Chad Collins, says he was threatened with consequences from his own party if he voted against it. I spoke with him earlier today. Hi, Mr. Collins. Welcome to Power Play.
Thanks for having me on today.
So this week you posted on social media that you informed the government that you can't support the affordability package if it doesn't include support for seniors and people with disabilities. Why did you go public with that?
Well, I listened to the Prime Minister's speech last week in the House of Commons, where he talked about Liberals and members in the government having the ability to disagree with each other. We have the ability to disagree with each other privately. I think he referenced we have those disagreements publicly. And he also stated quite clearly that we have the ability to represent our constituents. And so when I was informed that seniors and people with disabilities were excluded from the affordability package, specifically the rebate program that we were developing, I felt comfortable advising my party that I could not support the initiative based largely on the Prime Minister's comments. And it came as a surprise to me on Monday when I received a call to say that I was supposed to meet with someone based on my opposition. And when explaining why I was doing that, I think that people with disabilities and seniors face the same affordability challenges as every other Canadian. Many of them don't have the same access to additional income. Many of them live on government supports. I thought I made the case quite clearly to government leadership. And I was told that if, in fact, I voted against that aspect of the bill, that there'd be consequences. I sat on that for about 24 hours, and it bothered me over that period of time. And I then made the call to say that, that threat, that veiled threat, is in stark contrast to the words that the Prime Minister talked about last week. And so I think it's important that Canadians know, what's happening in Parliament. I think Canadians should know that, I think Canadians would agree with me when I say that for as much as we operate in a party system and we operate as a team, when there are disagreements, I think MPs should have the ability to come out publicly and share with their constituents and share with Canadians that they have a problem with a piece of legislation. This could have been avoided had caucus been consulted on the affordability package before it was announced. That didn't happen.
I'm just curious.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but I'm just curious, what kind of consequences were mentioned to you?
Well, they weren't explicit. They didn't state what those are, and I can only guess what they are. But those comments were made, and I don't take threats lightly. I've been in Hamilton politics for several decades now. Those aren't the worst threats that I've heard over the years, but they were threats. And if those two statements really don't jive, vote for this package or else, versus the Prime Minister standing up and saying we can have these public disagreements. We're allowed to disagree with each other, and we're allowed to share our opinions when government legislation maybe doesn't jive with the priorities of our local communities. And I would say that this falls into that category for me in particular.
So what is your assessment right now of how the government is forming policy around the affordability crisis? Do you see a coherent or consistent message?
Well, I can look back over the last couple of years since the pandemic and look at efforts that address affordability, right? We look at the affordable housing, the national housing strategy that's provided billions of almost $100 billion in terms of support. It just made the housing announcement here in Hamilton today. I can look at the dental care initiative that we have. I can look at the $10 a day childcare, and all of those initiatives deal with affordability. This package is a pretty big one, and for it to exclude a big portion of the population, I think is problematic, as I stated earlier. And I think for it to, those other initiatives included feedback from Liberal members, from government members. We all have the opportunity every week to speak to the Prime Minister, speak to our colleagues about what we feel is important, what should be a priority. The fact that this message and this program is created solely in the Prime Minister's office and is not shared with government members, it does not provide us an opportunity, like we had on those other files, to provide input, to state quite clearly before it's announced that I'm uncomfortable with this going forward unless it includes seniors or people with disabilities. I'm certain that there are other people in my government and my colleagues who might say that there are better ways to address affordability with just over $6 billion. That's the price tag on this package. So all that said, I think this goes back to communication, and I think it goes back to an MP's right to publicly share their disagreement with the government when those cases arise.
But I ask you about that policy because back in May, the Prime Minister said that if you send more people more benefits, well, then inflation goes up by exactly that amount. Now your party seems to have basically flip-flopped on that. Do you feel like this is continually a coherent message and a consistent track on affordability measures when you consider that the Prime Minister seems to have changed his mind in the course of that many months?
I can't speak for the Prime Minister. I can speak for myself, and I can say that, as I illustrated before, whether it's the National Housing Strategy, whether it's the dental benefits, whether it's the support that we're providing through pharmacare, I think if you add all of these initiatives up, you can look at ways and means in which the government is trying to provide some relief from an affordability perspective. And I think this accomplishes that. I think providing a GST relief on purchases that people will make over the Christmas holidays and into the month of February, I think that provides relief, possibly hundreds of dollars for individuals and or families depending on their spending habits. I think the rebate checks will go a long way. We have precedents, right? I think we've sent 2 out in the past. This might be number 3 in terms of rebates that we've provided for Canadians to help them offset the costs, whether they're going to the grocery store or otherwise. So I think this is in line with some of the benefit packages that we provided in the past. The fact that someone would think that excluding seniors and persons with disability was a good idea is, it's hard for me to describe on TV without using words that probably shouldn't be used on TV.
So with that in mind, just before I let you go, because we're running out of time here, if this legislation now, or if this policy is not changed, $250 checks that don't include seniors, people with disabilities, how will you vote on that?
Well, it's quite clear. If it's me siding with the government and the Prime Minister's office or whoever's coming up with these policies or my constituents, it's an easy call for me. I'll continue to vote against it.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Liberal MP for Hamilton East, Stony Creek, Chad Collins, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me on today.